Sin. That got everybody's attention. Somehow or another we need to be struck periodically to get into it. We have in last week's gospel and this week's gospel kind of an interesting parallel going on. Last week, the healing of the leper. Jesus touched a leper. And as Deacon Bill pointed out last week, such an amazing act that Jesus would touch someone who was unclean. Jesus, who was clean and himself the source of cleanliness. And in today's gospel, we have a paralytic who's brought by his friends. Thank God for friends. He's brought by his friends to be healed. Interesting thing is that in the ancient world, as Deacon Bill pointed out last week, physical illness was frequently equated or recognized as being the result of human sin. You were a leper, or you were paralyzed, not because of a virus or a broken leg or whatever it might be, but because you had sinned. Often reminds me of my grandmother. I tripped going upstairs, and my grandmother would say, "See, God punished you." I'd say, "For what?" She'd go, like somehow or another I should know. And we make that connection, don't we? That somehow or another, things that go wrong for us are connected to something that we have done wrong. But there's an interesting parallel in that reading from last week. When Jesus touched the leper was healed. In today's gospel, when Jesus touches the paralytic is healed. Nothing changes in Jesus. We wouldn't expect anything to. So what? But in the story that Deacon Bill told about St. Francis of Assisi, when he embraced the leper was still a leper. He didn't change. But Francis was healed. That transformation is what Lent is all about. That transformation, that change inside of us is what we are entering into as we approach Lent this coming Wednesday. Ash Wednesday, we come here and we say, which is easier? To say your sins are forgiven or stand up and walk? Most of us would sit here and say, "Oh, it's easier to say your sins are forgiven. Just go ahead and say it. Nobody knows." But to say get up and walk, first we got to get an MRI. We got to take them up to Stanford. We got a whole lot of things that have got to happen. But which is easier? To change the human heart? To transform the way we view the world? Francis, who was not only terrified of the leper, but hated them. That prejudice that was there. In today's gospel, as the paralytic is lowered through the roof, a man who was publicly perceived to be a sinner. God said this man is wrong. And yet his family and friends gathered around him and lowered him through the roof to be healed. Take away the wrong. Transform him. It's real easy to stand up here and talk about other people's sins. And I frequently have people who meet me at the door or drop me an email and say, "How come you don't preach about X, Y, Z? These people need to be told." And the only thought that keeps on coming to my mind is, what's the sin in our own life that we're overlooking? It's so much easier to point out the sin of another person than it is to transform the sin in our own life, whatever that may be. And Lent is not about healing other people. Lent is about allowing the Lord to embrace the leper and the paralytic inside of us and be healed. And hopefully, there are friends in our life who will bring us to that moment to allow Christ to touch us. Friends who might say, hey, go to church this Sunday, want to go? Or hey, need a ride to get ashes? How about reconciliation? Every Saturday afternoon, 4 o'clock. We're having a reconciliation service during Lent. Need a ride? I'll give you a ride. Are we willing to reach out and assist another person in being transformed? Are we willing to allow Jesus to reach into us and transform us? Where is the leper in our life, as we were asked last week? And this week, where is the paralytic in our life? And who do we need to be friends to? Which is easier to say? Your sins are forgiven, or stand up and walk? I think it's that inner transformation that is the real miracle. May this Lenten journey for each of us be a time of transformation.